Police lights, I was sure they were about to start flashing behind me, ready to ruin my night. But when the car finally got close enough, my blood ran cold. It wasn't a cop. It was him. The guy from the quick check. The same brown coat. The same truck. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I slammed my foot on the gas, heart pounding, trying to put as much distance between us as possible. But he started flashing his headlights and honking, staying right on my tail. I didn't know what to do, outrun him or pull over and hope he'd pass. I was in a small sedan, he was in a pickup. My odds weren't great, but I chose to run. The faster I went, the more real the fear became. It wasn't just panic anymore, it was pure, unfiltered terror. The kind that tells you you're seconds away from dying. I hit 100 miles an hour, the voice in my head screaming that I wouldn't survive if I kept going. I swerved into the right lane, praying he'd fly past me, but he didn't. He followed. When I tried slowing down, his truck slammed into my rear bumper, jolting me forward. That's when I knew, this wasn't random. He was trying to kill me. My mind went blank, running on instinct. When I saw him veer in to ram me again, I swerved hard to the left and slammed on the brakes. The truck shot past me, fishtailed, then spun out, crashing off the road and disappearing into the dark field beside the highway. My hands were shaking violently, but I forced myself to keep driving. I didn't stop until I was home. Once I locked the door behind me, I called the police, told them everything. I couldn't even pinpoint where exactly it had happened, but they still took my report. I know that Quick Check has cameras in the parking lot, so I'm sure they'll catch him, eventually. It's only been a week since that night, and I haven't heard a word yet. My car's a little banged up, but I'll get it fixed. As for why that guy came after me, I have no idea. Maybe I looked at him too long. Maybe he was just insane. Either way, I hope I never see his face again. Doing there to begin with. And let me tell you, one glance at this guy told me something was seriously off. Forget the fact that he was sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring into a refrigerator, this man was definitely high on something. His eyes were unnaturally wide, and his lower lip was twitching non-stop, trembling like he was freezing, even though the store was warm and he was wearing a jacket. His body was twisted in an odd, tense way, like sitting still was physically painful. But what really got me was his expression. He wasn't smiling or frowning, just staring at me with this lifeless, hollow look that made it seem like there was no one behind those eyes. The whole sight sent a chill straight through me. After a few painfully long seconds of staring at each other, I finally broke eye contact and hurried down another aisle, just wanting to grab my food and leave. But my order wasn't ready yet. I stood at the counter, fidgeting, my anxiety climbing fast. I turned slightly so I could keep an eye on the corner where he'd been sitting, half expecting him to appear out of nowhere, but he didn't. Eventually, the clerk handed me my sandwich, and I got out of there as fast as I could. I thought that was the end of it. But as I turned toward the highway, something caught my eye, a blur of motion. I looked back and saw someone sprinting full speed from the store entrance toward the far end of the parking lot. I was already pulling onto the highway, but one glance at the brown coat told me it was him. As I drove past the Quick Check, I saw him jump into a truck. I didn't even want to think about what a guy like that was doing at 2 a.m., I just wanted to get home safely. I pressed on the gas, the lights of the store fading behind me until it was just me and the empty road again. I'm used to being the only car out that late, which is why it startled me to see headlights appear in my rearview mirror. What really made my stomach drop was how quickly they were closing in. Whoever it was, they were going faster than me, and I wasn't exactly crawling. My first thought was that it might be a cop, so I eased off the gas. But the headlights didn't back off. They just kept getting closer, and that's when I realized something was about to happen. There's a small Quick Check just off the highway, not too far from where I live. It's the only place open 24/7 in this quiet, middle-of-nowhere town. About a 25-minute drive if I'm speeding, which I usually am, so for city folks, that's basically next door. My sleep schedule is a disaster, so I've been there more times than I can count. I like to think I'm pretty average looking, easy to overlook, but I wouldn't be shocked if the night shift employees recognize me by now. This happened just last week, so every detail is still clear in my mind. It was past midnight, and I was coding on my laptop. My focus peaks between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., that sweet spot every night owl knows. The downside to that is the sudden hunger that hits out of nowhere, which is exactly why I shut everything down and decided to grab food at 2 a.m. The road to Quick Check is more like a local back road than a highway, so it's usually dead quiet. The drive was uneventful. I pulled in, ordered a sandwich at the counter, then wandered the aisles while I waited. Between caffeine overload and ADHD, standing still isn't my strong suit. I was pacing near one corner when I noticed something strange. At the far end of an aisle, facing the refrigerators, someone was sitting cross-legged on the floor. It was so weird that I almost ignored it, then did a double take to be sure I wasn't imagining things. But no, it was real. A person, sitting on the ground, staring at the fridge like he was studying it. All I could see was a brown coat and jeans. I wanted a better look at his face, so I moved a few aisles over. My plan was to turn the corner quickly, glance at him, then walk off before he realized I was looking. I didn't want to be obvious, staring at strangers isn't exactly polite. But apparently, I wasn't subtle enough, because the second I peeked around the corner, he snapped his head toward me and locked eyes. The movement was so sudden that I froze on the spot, completely forgetting what I was supposed to do next. So before things could escalate, I shouted at her to freeze and slid my gun out. I didn't aim it at her, just rested it on the steering wheel so she could see it. Whatever she was reaching for, she stopped on the spot. I ordered her not to move, and she obeyed. To my surprise, she stopped talking too, she just stared straight ahead with an unreadable look on her face. Luckily, we were less than 30 minutes from Artesia. After a tense half hour, I pulled into a gas station where two big rigs were parked. I told her to get out. She hesitated and offered some nonsense excuse I can't even recall, so I leaned across, yanked the passenger door open, and effectively shoved her out of the truck. She stumbled and fell onto the pavement, screaming something incoherent. A trucker started jogging over, and I could already imagine the accusations, just him seeing me throw a woman out of a vehicle. I didn't want to deal with that, so I warned him briefly about her intent and then peeled out of the lot before he could reach me. I stopped at another station to fill up, checked the passenger seat, and found a burner phone battery and a sealed pack of zip ties tucked between the cushions. I didn't want to imagine what they'd planned. I tossed the items in the trash and got back on the road, eager to finish the run. I never reported the incident to the police or my company, not because it wasn't worth reporting, but because I didn't want to explain why I was armed or why I had forcibly removed someone from my truck. You can draw your own conclusions. One thing's certain, being armed that night likely saved my life. Holstered just beneath my steering column, my Glock 43 sat where I could reach it. I never officially asked the company for permission to carry, but after delivering to places like that, it felt like common sense. I slowed, cracked the passenger window a couple inches, and the woman, who looked about my age, rushed over and tried the locked handle. She said her car had died and pleaded for a ride to the nearest gas station, holding her phone up like she couldn't get a signal. Her voice jittered, like she was frantic or maybe on something. I hesitated for a beat, the whole scene felt off, but knowing a firearm was within reach nudged me toward letting her in. I unlocked the door, she slid inside and muttered a vague, slightly slurred, "Thank you," without really meeting my eyes. Her speech made me suspect she'd been drinking or was otherwise impaired, which put me on edge. Before pulling away I asked a few basic questions. Had she hit something? Did the engine die? But she kept dodging them and kept pushing me to just drive. The more she talked, the more I considered telling her to get out. Then I glanced back at her car and almost choked. A man stepped out from behind it as if he'd been crouching there the whole time. Adrenaline spiked. I looked up the road and saw another figure standing roughly 50 feet ahead, holding something long, maybe a pipe or a bat, moving toward us. Instinct took over. I slammed the gas. The woman spun around, started yelling, and began rummaging in her purse. I had a sinking feeling I knew what she was searching for. This took place in the summer of 2022. I was 25 at the time, working what most people would probably call a strange logistics job. I was transporting refurbished electronics and custom PC parts for this small delivery startup trying to compete with Amazon in obscure rural areas. The routes were long and unpredictable. Some nights I'd drive 12 hours straight through pitch-black highways, cutting across remote parts of the Southwest that most shipping companies wouldn't go near. The money was good enough to make it worthwhile, and I didn't mind the solitude since I'd grown up in a family that loved road trips. On this particular night, I was nearing the end of a Phoenix to Lovington run. It was close to 1 a.m., and I was winding along a lonely stretch of Route 82 near the edges of Lincoln National Forest in southern New Mexico. If you've never driven through that area after dark, it's hard to describe how empty it feels. The road is narrow, the lighting scarce, and you might spot another car every 20 or 30 minutes if you're lucky. But here's the catch, Route 82 is the only real road cutting through that region for miles. Any GPS alternative would tack on at least 2 extra hours, sending you way north through Carrizozo or something similar. So if you're traveling across that part of New Mexico, Route 82 is basically your only choice. I was listening to a true crime podcast when I rounded a bend and saw a red hatchback awkwardly parked on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking. I slowed down automatically. As my headlights drew closer, they caught a woman standing beside the car, holding her phone up like she was trying to get a signal. My first instinct was to keep driving. I'm not heartless, but I'm also not stupid about the kinds of things that can happen in the middle of nowhere at that hour. Then I thought about my girlfriend, my sister, how I'd hope someone would stop for them. And besides, I wasn't defenseless. I had my Glock 43. But if she had faked leaving twice, it wasn't unreasonable to think she might try it a third time. The tension was unbearable, and I couldn't wait any longer. I carefully unlocked the stall and stepped out, fully expecting to see her standing there, but the bathroom was empty. I quickly washed my hands and hurried out, uncertain where she might be or if she was waiting elsewhere in the store. Back in the main area, a large man was checking out at the counter. I lingered near a rack until he finished and left, then used him as cover to exit the store. I figured that if she was outside, at least another person would be nearby. I briefly thought I might be overreacting, but that notion vanished the moment I stepped outside. She was there again, off to the side of the front entrance, clearly staring at me. She was holding something I couldn't quite identify. It might have been a knife, but I wasn't certain. The way she crouched slightly, holding it like she was ready to spring, made it feel like she could attack at any second. I braced myself to scream, run, or even defend myself. But instead of coming at me, she turned quickly and moved around the side of the building toward the back. I sprinted to our car and got in as fast as I could. My husband looked confused and asked why I'd taken so long. I promised to explain once we were back on the road. He didn't push, and we pulled away. As we drove off, I glanced back and saw her standing at the edge of the building, watching our car. I don't know why, but the sight unsettled me deeply. I told my husband everything, and he got a bit frustrated with me for not bringing my phone to call him for help, which was fair. Beyond that, we decided to put the incident behind us and try to enjoy the rest of our trip. I will say one thing, I don't use roadside restrooms anymore, and I have zero regrets about that. I thought that would be it, that she'd leave and I could finally get on with things. But no, instead of walking away, the woman actually turned back toward me and stepped closer to the sink area. She didn't turn on the water, didn't glance at the mirror, or do anything that anyone normally does at a sink. She just stood there, arms at her sides, again giving me the feeling that she was waiting for me to do something. Unease creeping in, I slipped into the nearest stall and locked the door behind me. The moment I sat down, I immediately regretted not bringing my phone. There was no way to alert my husband if something went wrong, and the whole situation was screaming off about this woman. I stayed quiet, hoping she would eventually leave. After a few minutes, I heard the soft slap of her flip-flops moving toward the door, followed by the door opening and slamming shut. I waited a bit longer to make sure she was really gone. Then it hit me, I could still hear breathing. Not mine, someone else's, somewhere in the bathroom. She hadn't left at all. She must have faked it, opening and slamming the door to make it sound like she had gone, but was standing somewhere near the exit, just out of view. I froze, holding my breath as best I could, terrified she might hear me. All I could think about was how dumb I was for not bringing my phone. Eventually, the door opened and closed again, and the breathing stopped, giving me a small wave of relief. But I didn't move, still unsure. Then, just as I was about to unlock the stall, there was a loud gasp, like someone had been holding their breath, and the bathroom door opened and closed once more. That's when I truly started panicking. She had faked leaving twice now. I had no clue what she wanted, but it was clear whatever it wasn't good. Part of me was convinced she might finally be gone, but I didn't dare take the chance. This happened about 3 years ago when my husband and I were driving cross-country from Utah to Georgia. The route we'd mapped out wasn't exactly the fastest, but it included a few spots my husband really wanted to see. The trade-off, though, was that we'd be passing through long, empty stretches of highway. The worst by far was this section of western Kansas along U.S. Route 400, just miles and miles of farmland with no signs of life. We'd been on the road most of the day, and I had fallen asleep in the passenger seat right around sunset. I'm one of those people who can pass out the moment a car starts moving, so I was completely out for a few hours. Around 10 p.m., I woke to the car slowing down and realized my husband had pulled into a tiny gas station just off the highway. He told me he was going to grab some snacks and fill up the tank. I figured it was probably my last chance for a while to use a real restroom, so I got out and went inside. I didn't bother bringing my phone or my purse, I was only going to be a minute, so I didn't see the point. The cashier, an older man, barely glanced up when I walked in. The bathrooms were tucked away down a narrow hallway near the back of the store. As I opened the women's restroom door, I nearly ran into a woman coming out of one of the stalls, which wouldn't have been notable, except for how she looked. Her hair was gray, wild, and matted, like it hadn't been washed in weeks, and it had this greasy, sticky sheen to it. She wore foam flip-flops that made a faint slapping sound with every step. But what really threw me off was her thick, purple and green winter coat. Mind you, this was Kansas in the middle of summer, easily 80 degrees outside. She was holding a tied-up plastic grocery bag, and when our eyes met, she just stared. Not a casual, oops, excuse me, kind of look, this was a long, fixed stare, like she was waiting for me to say something specific. I had no clue what to do, so I gave her a quick polite nod and tried to move past, but she didn't step aside right away. I brushed it off and figured that was the end of it.